but arts.
When most people go to new cities, they're looking at the buildings, but half the time I'm looking at the sidewalk.
I'm Julian Beever, street artist. In this series, I'll be transforming pavements in cities around the world with my 3D chalk drawings.
Oh my gosh, you can actually see like the wings are raising up.
Plus, revealing the secrets of how I do it.
Even faster, you can pour on powder and rub it all in.
And tracking down the world's most prolific street artists.
I think the thing about street art is it's not defined by one thing, it can be anything.
I'm in Amsterdam, capital of the Netherlands and famous for canals, tulips and, of course, art's great masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer. What better city to do my 3-day pavement drawing?
What I love about Amsterdam is this mixture of beautiful old buildings and water together. It gives artists lots of material to work from.
But despite Amsterdam's beauty, I'm only concerned about one thing. And so far, things aren't looking good.
All over Amsterdam you find these streets of cobbled bricks. They're really no good for pavement drawing at all, so it's really quite a search to find a suitable spot. This lovely square in Amsterdam would have been perfect. It's got lovely scenery, trees, plenty of space, lots of people, but it's got these horrible small cobbled stones all over it. Same story here. This would have been a good spot. Lovely backdrop. I've been looking around all over the city now for 2 or 3 hours. Everywhere it's the same, cobbles. It's like this everywhere. Now, this could have potential. Let's do a test. It's too shiny, it just rubs off. That's a great shame because it's a lovely spot here with this lovely castle behind. Would have been good.
My last hope is the square of Bursch Plain. Could this work?
At last! I've found a square in Amsterdam that isn't cobbles. Let's have a look at it. Well, it's not ideal. It's got a lot of grit in it, which is going to break up any clear lines and make the detail a bit difficult. But I think under the circumstances, this is the best I'm going to get. In pavement drawing, you can't always get everything you want. You have to make the best of the environment you find.
I've found a home for my 3D drawing. Now I've got to get on with it.
Beginning of the morning, but unfortunately, it looks like it's been raining in the night and the ground is totally wet, and that's really no good for drawing. So I'm going to have to wait till that dries out. But in the meantime, I've brought a few props with me, which I'm going to set up, because I'm going to do a still life. And I've decided to do that here in Holland, because in the 18th century, the Dutch really were the masters of still life. This painting's going to be a little bit different to the other ones, in that I'm going to work directly from the objects in front of me. I'm not going to work from a sketch. I'm going to look at the objects, draw them. Look at the objects, draw them. So the objects, a wine decanter. I decided I wanted to have some flowers in this arrangement, and what better flower to choose for Holland than the tulip? One factor to consider in choosing the objects is to choose things with different textures and different appearances. So I've got that metal boat, another traditional still life favourite, bunch of grapes. I've brought myself plenty of fruit, suggesting food and opulence. Perhaps today we don't really associate fruit, oranges and lemons, with wealth at all. It was every day. But back in the 18th century, the importations of fruit and the wealth to own them was probably a very special thing. I'm going to have a cheese board arranged on the other side of my painting, and on it a great big lump of cheese. But I haven't got that yet. I've got to pop to the cheese shop. I'm reasonably happy with that. I quite like that. I'd like to put some wine in the decanter and the glass and have a look at that before I go any further.
So the still life is ready, but the pavement isn't.
Because I've been hanging around for half an hour and it isn't drying out very fast, I'm trying to speed the process up by covering it in newspaper to try and absorb some of this surface water. I'm going to rough in the outline, estimate the outline of this still life with the rope on the ground.
It's not long before my 3D still life draws some interest.
What are you doing?
Well, I've come here to Amsterdam to draw a Dutch still life.
Oh, wow.
On the sidewalk.
Why do you need the rope?
Well, it helps me estimate where to put lines at the start.
And what if people just walk on your piece of art? What does...
It doesn't matter too much. It's a bit more irritating if you come over with a pram and you get wheel lines that go off it.
And why do you put those cameras here?
Well, that's the key to it, because the whole thing, you look through this camera to see it.
Ah, this is fantastic. This is fantastic.
That's nice, yeah.
It's already starting to take shape, even at this stage. A lot of what I do is trial and error. I have a vague idea of where the line should go, but it's far from sure. I then check it in the camera. If it's right, so much the better, but if it's wrong, change it, try again. I think my wine glass might be a bit too big. It looks good, but too big. It's worth noticing that now at this stage rather than later on when it's all coloured in. What I've been doing for the last couple of hours is going over the outlines in black. There were two traditions in Dutch still life painting. One was to give it lots and lots of colour and opulence. The other was to keep it very austere with reduced colour. I've decided to make it look old. I'm going to go for the austere version with toned down colours. Before I absolutely commit myself to this low-key approach, I'm just taking one of the brighter objects, a little tangerine, and seeing how that will look with reduced colour. So although I'm using a bright orange, I'm reducing the tone of it, keeping it more brown with a dark shadow on one side.
I've already seen your pictures on the web.
You have?
Very nice, yes.
Good.
And you make it also by looking only the picture?
This one, I'm looking at that arrangement of objects there.
I always thought you preferred to a computer.
No, I don't use a computer at all.
It's really nice. So, like, is that doing like mathematics and stuff, like, to get there?
No, I don't use mathematics. I just use judgment. I look through that little camera all the time, back and forth. If it looks right, I do it.
That's a pretty good idea.
It's always a funny feeling on the first day when I start a drawing, because nobody can see what it's going to be. But ultimately, if you're sensitive about that kind of thing, you shouldn't be working in the streets. It's the end of day one, and I'm pleased with what I've done. I set up the still life arrangement here. I've done the outline, started colouring it in, and worked on the shadows as well. I've made two big decisions today. That was to change the colour of the tablecloth so that there's less colour in the whole thing, and to tone the whole thing down so that it isn't so bright. I'm feeling really positive about tomorrow. It's looking good, and I just hope I don't mess it up.
Amsterdam has a new wave of Dutch masters, but instead of using oil on canvas, these artists favour the medium of the street, the spray can. Graffiti art may be illegal on the walls of the Dutch capital, but the city's galleries are full of it. Amsterdam legend Faith 71 has worked with aerosols for 17 years, straddling the worlds of the street and the gallery.
I'm Faith 71. Mostly I make portraits and I make paintings, realistic stuff. But sometimes I like to do spontaneous stuff in the city, like this example. I painted this flower because it's something which you don't expect. It looks like a wallpaper and it's a funny place. It's a weird place for a wallpaper in this style, so that's why I did it. And I did it illegal because I feel it's necessary that sometimes people do spontaneous stuff which you don't expect in the city, that makes the city alive. I like the idea that people get surprised of how I look and they don't expect me to be a graffiti writer or a street artist or whatever you call it. I don't care what it is what it is. But, you know, I like that because I like the contradictionary, you know, in it. Not all my work is on the street. I got some piece here. This is the painting I made from Albert Verlinde, the portrait. As you can see, I made it completely with spray can. I let the aerosol be what it is because I want to show that it's aerosol. I don't want a clean airbrush image, I want a spray can image. What I learned from the old masters is that the dark shades they used, and you can see it by any old master, is very thin, you know, thin paint, thin layer. And the highlights, and this is mostly the, you know, the little detail in the eye, the paint is much thicker. And the same technique I used with spray paint, you know, I try to imagine what would Rembrandt paint it if he only had spray cans. What would he do? What would Vermeer, Caravaggio, all these old masters? I want to see how far can I go? Can I compete with oil paintings?
There's a very great deal of nightlife in the centre of Amsterdam, so I'm quite lucky that this is all stayed in one piece. So there's breakfast. I'm wondering about how to do the reflection on that decanter. The main body of it, full of wine, is very, very dark, almost black. So I'm using this full black chalk and just adding a little bit of red to it in parts. I'm having to imagine the reflection of the window here. So why not an 18th century one, since that's the aim of this piece. And I think it would be made up of a lot of small panes. And here you can just see a vague outline of a figure in the imagined room that's reflecting. So that could be a little self-portrait there of the artist looking into the decanter.
But suddenly, the calm of the square in Burgplan is shattered, and my drawing comes under a four-wheeled threat.
There's mechanised street cleaners here. I'm sure he's not going to do anything stupid, but you never know. I think with that thing, he could wipe this thing, well, he wouldn't wipe it all off, but he'd ruin it in 10 seconds. Gonna make sure I'm between my drawing and him. Oh, well, I got a friendly nod, so I think he knows not to come over here.
It's one of those unexpected things that happens when you're working on the streets. But with the still life safe and sound, I'm back to business.
There are a whole arrangement of different materials and textures in this still life, which is what old masters used to do. It allowed them to show off how skillful they were at showing porcelain, glass, metal, wood, fabric. So all those elements are in here. Now I'm working on these grapes, which themselves are a little bit tricky because they're not just round objects, but light shines through them a little bit. I don't want to make them too bright. I keep resisting this tendency to draw these things bright. I want to keep it low-key, monochrome.
But as soon as I begin to shade them in, I realise it's just not working.
I'm washing off some of the black outlines I've done around these grapes. I think grapes are a little bit too delicate to have black around them. All artists should be prepared to rub out or wash off something that's wrong and not just stick with it doggedly because you've already done it. We're getting near to midday now and there's a few more people turning up, showing some interest, which is nice.
Great to
meet you.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
I just came up to pick up my bike, but I was seeing your stuff and I was like, because I'm a street artist myself, I make little doors. I am building my own empire, the Helvetica Empire. And everywhere I go, I put little doors on the wall.
So in the street?
In the street, yeah. You want to see it? Or
Yeah.
I don't normally wander off in the middle of a drawing, but on the streets, you never know what's going to happen or what you're going to see next.
Oh, there's a door.
You know, and this is a doormat, and
it's rather sweet.
I discovered this last forgotten empire, the Helvetica Empire, and it's in a parallel world beside our world.
What's the number? What are the numbers about?
Well, the numbers are related to our words, like A, B, C, D. You know,
sounds very complicated.
It's very, yeah, it's a sort of math.
Is it anything like astrology?
Something like that.
Well, thank you very much for letting me see that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your work, because, you know...
It's great to see this guy's work, but with time pressing, I've got to get on with a major part of this drawing, the tulips.
I'm now going to make the great step and move on to the tulips. Remember, they're only a small part of this arrangement, but because they're tall, they go right back into the distance. Another reason this is harder work is because there's such a long way to walk between the bit I'm drawing and the camera where I look at it. I would guess that for a flower like that, which is a little bit complicated and has got a very special shape and parts, I might have to walk 50 times to and fro, backwards and forwards. I'm finding it quite difficult to get the colours, tone and shapes correct. I can't really expect to compete with the Dutch masters who practiced every day painting still lifes. So I'm starting off with a bit of a disadvantage. When people look at it from this angle, they see a bizarre stretch on the ground. They might be able to recognise that they are flowers, I'm not sure. But they'll have a surprise when they look through that camera. It's not the longest drawing I've ever done, but I think the stretch is probably the most extreme. When you think that those tulips are only about this high, and yet to get that effect, I've had to go, what is that, 10 metres?
Just looking at your photo, absolutely fabulous.
Thank you very much.
The 3D effect's absolutely brilliant. It's a mixture of Turkish and Hollands.
Turkish? Where do you see Turkish?
Tulips.
Yeah, the tulips are original from Turkey.
Oh?
Yeah.
Oh, I've learned something there, but one always associates them with Holland, surely.
I like pictures, that's why I appreciate it. I just want to try how much I appreciate your picture. It's very clever.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in the coffee shops, it's the same kind of thinking there. And they tell so many stories, the coffee shops. And if you go into a smart shop, it's the same thing. It's so beautiful. The Amsterdam is so brilliant. Amsterdam is told about it.
Have a nice day.
At the end of my second day, I've made good progress and met some rather interesting people. Underground street artist Laser 3.14, known for his graffiti poems that have appeared on walls across Amsterdam, has also made the move from street to gallery with an exhibition of spray can pieces inspired by classical music entitled The Aerosol Symphonies.
But I was like a conventional graffiti writer. Kind of started to lose my interest and I wanted to push myself more into the art world. And by the end of the 90s, I made enough paintings to go around and show it to galleries. And I guess the first gallery I walked in was this gallery which we were in. The idea behind it is street art meets classical music. This piece that I did is called An Ode to Joy, and it's based on the last symphony that Beethoven wrote, Beethoven's Ninth. I didn't use the piece like the way it was meant to be. I just made up my own sci-fi-ish story. This piece that I did for the show is called We Thrive in Ludwig V, and it's based on the first notes from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And the idea behind it and the feeling that I got from these first notes was like, it's like a big bang. It's something that's suddenly there, you know, there's like da-da-da-da. Well, this is the kind of work that I normally do on the street. Now it's like on a silk screen, but normally I do it on billboards. Where I get the ideas from is like from everywhere, you know? You get inspired by things you see on the street, things you hear, maybe a TV program, maybe, I don't know, it comes from everywhere. I like my identity hidden because it kind of keeps the mystery up, and it even gives a deeper meaning that you know everything about the artist and how he looks. And what I like about doing it on the street is like the opposite of a gallery, is that artwork comes to you, you know? You get caught by surprise, and I like that effect of it.
First thing in the morning on the third day, and it's a lovely day. And furthermore, all my covers seem to be there. So everything's looking good. I'm all ready to get started. The further you get on a drawing, the more there is to lose in a way if it starts raining. And I'm so pleased with what I've got done in the previous 2 days that I feel the stakes are quite high now.
I've made good progress overall on the still life. Now I want to concentrate on the finer details. But 3 days into the drawing, I'm not sure about this cheese.
It's beginning to pong a little bit now. Although I brought all these objects with me for this still life arrangement, I knew I wasn't going to use this beer mug. I don't think it quite fits in with it, but I did need something to put the tulips in. In the meantime, I've had a look around Amsterdam for something suitable. And I've found this beer mug. And it has on the Amsterdam crest, which I really like, and I think it will go very well. I'm not going to do it in white porcelain, however. I'm going to do it in a stoneware, in a brown porcelain, which I think will fit better.
Are you going to participate in this drawing?
This one's a bit more of a formal, fine art piece than most of the ones I do. Usually mine are a bit humorous and light-hearted, and there's a fun element. This is a bit more serious.
But in a way I thought it was very Dutch because of the Dutch painters back then. It's amazing. It's really nice to meet you.
Have you looked at it from the side?
Yeah, I had looked from the side.
Could you tell what it was when you looked at it from the side?
I'd already seen it this way first.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Good. When people ask me about anamorphic drawing, they always concentrate on the perspective part of it. But it's not only that. There are techniques that all artists would use, not only in anamorphic drawing. For instance, the use of shadows. I'm trying to make the effect of a shadow here that stem is casting onto this leaf. So when it's done, it should stand up next to the leaf.
But I've been too busy looking at the details to look at the sky, and there are some nasty grey clouds looming. The rush is now on to get my still life finished before the rain pours down.
And I'm so close to the finishing point. I can't leave all those white lines on, they're far too bright. I don't like having to rush things. I prefer to take my time and do them well. But working on the streets, you don't always have that privilege. We're almost there. I'm putting the finishing touches on. I keep looking at the sky, which is getting very threatening over there. It would be a tragedy and a disaster if this picture was rained on now before I finally get it photographed and documented. Okay, just before it rains, I'm going to put the final touch in, as if I was a Dutch master, which of course I'm not. I'm going to put a little monogram in with my initials at the front of the picture. There we are. Right, in 1 minute, we're going to switch on this camera and the monitor screen here. It's all free. Over here, please. See that screen? We're going to show this picture on the screen in 1 minute. It'll look all 3D. Yeah, they don't understand how brilliant it is. Don't feel reserved. Let your feelings go. And if you want to burst into spontaneous applause, that's no problem. So it's all happening over here. I'm very excited by this drawing. I'm very excited by this crowd. I think they're going to be very responsive, but I don't know. 3, 2, 1. This has been a great painting for me. It's been a first in 3 ways. It's been the first time I've ever set up a still life arrangement in the street. It's the first time I've ever done an anamorphic still life. And it's the most stretched anamorphic drawing I've ever done. So, it's all complete. I'm going to enjoy my own Dutch breakfast. So Amsterdam, thank you for having me, and cheers.